to, create these interactive virtual stories. So I'm the founder of Double I Studios, and we like to make interactive stories that have a meaningful element to them. We like to focus on stories that are collaborative and community oriented and interactive. So those are the kind of hallmarks for us. And this production grew out of other work we'd been doing with VR theater, merging these fields for the last several years. We had a piece in 2019 at the Venice Film Festival called Love Seat. And then prior to that, I'd done and directed work for a platform called High Fidelity. And we were experimenting with mixing VR and theater. And also prior to that with Double I, we were merging those things before in a game called Metropoles. So this production, Finding Pandora X, continued to evolve out of all of his other work. And I'm the director and producer of this production.
All right, let's go next to Alyssa.
Hi. So yes, I met Kiira quite a few years ago now, maybe 5 or 6. We were working together on a project that was spearheaded by Lance Weiler and the Columbia Digital Storytelling Lab. It was called Sherlock Holmes and the Internet of Things. And Kiira and I just hit it off. We were on the same wavelength. And after that collaboration, we were like, we have to keep working together. We have to keep, and we were just brainstorming. And finally she said, hey, how about, you come on one of my projects. And that was sort of the beginning of this wonderful collaboration that we've had. That was with Cardboard City at Lincoln Center and the New York Film Festival. And it was our first AR experience. And what I've noticed about all the work that we do with Double I, just to bounce off what you had said, is that there is a huge drive to connect people and to have it be a group, a group experience. And it's been that way with every single thing. And as we've moved into more VR productions, that is also part of it, because VR can be a very solitary experience. And all of the work that Kiira and Double I Studios do is a group collective experience. And we're very focused on how do we get that group and that collective to work together, to collaborate, to talk to each other and to share. So just to add on to a little bit of what drives Double I Studios work. And over to Mark. And welcome, Jonathan.
Oh, hey, Jonathan. So I'm Mark Sternberg. I'm the lead developer and tech producer on Finding Pandora X. I actually knew Kiira back when we were both in the film world, and it was interesting because we both sort of made the transition into VR around the same time. I started out mostly doing 360 video work because 360 video is sort of like an easier transition from from film to 6 Degrees of Freedom, because you have to like learn game programming and stuff. But eventually I sort of moved on from even 360 video and did, take the plunge, learned Unity and all of those sorts of things. And so my role on this project and also on Love Seat, was to help to create some of the interactivity that the audience sees. And here, we're trying to make an experience that's open for a wide audience. So it was a lot of thought process that went into, how do we engage the audience as part of this production and still drive the narrative forward. So it's been a really great experience.
Wonderful. Jonathan, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure, I'd love to. My apologies for getting in a little bit late. Technical difficulties are always part of exploring in the virtual medium, and it's amazing how they can follow you even outside of VR. So I'm Jonathan David Martin. I'm a performer in Finding Pandora X. I play the role of Zeus, who's that handsome blue devil behind me. I also worked on Love Seat with Kiira and everyone at Double I Studios. And my background is I'm come from a live performance background mostly, and as a creator and performer in theater. I've worked as a performer and puppeteer on Broadway and Warhorse, performed a lot at regional theaters around the country, also as a producer of live performance with a company that I run called Smoke and Mirrors Collaborative that creates new works around contemporary social issues. And in the last few years, been moving more and more into augmented and virtual reality mediums.
And Vaughn, how about yourself?
There we go. I'm Vaughn Schmidt. I'm new as of last summer. I do some VR environment design and programming, focusing on VRChat as a platform, just because that's what I got really interested in. And I started making tutorials it was last year now. And they, Kiira, I don't remember if it was Kiira or was it Laura who reached out to me originally, but I was brought on board to help out with the all the fancy buttons and stuff for the environments that they wanted. So it's been pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it was funny. I was actually watching your tutorial videos, and then I was like, "Oh my God, we need him on the team. He's like one of the most talented VRChat developers."
I know. So when he says he did some, it's like he's our expert. We turn it to him for, every question. Let's ask Vaughn. So.
Great. Thank you. And then, the expression, save the exec for last. So, Joanna, the fabulous executive producer on this project, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joanna Popper, and I am at HP on the virtual reality team. I lead our initiatives around go-to-market and location-based entertainment. And so we have been working in virtual reality, releasing products like the HP Reverb G2 and our backpacks and all of the compatible computers and other products in VR, and working with great teams like this one. We've been supporting different teams at film festivals or tech conferences, and first met Kiira when she was working on running, when the team was working on running, and supported them in some of those initiatives through our partnership with Intel, and then supported the team at a Love Seat at Venice in 2019 with lots of computers and headsets, and making sure that their creative vision could come to life on top of some great technology. And so supported the team and the actors and the technical folk and everybody with the devices that could help them run the show this time. And so what excited me about this vision and what the team was doing was for us, we see VR as a way to connect, collaborate, to create, and to learn. And this team was, in that sweet spot of all of it, and continuing to push innovation by bringing people together, no matter where they were around the world, to be able to interact with this great artistry. And so we're thrilled to be working with this team on this triple award-winning project.
Cool, and I'm honored to get to talk to you all about it. Just a little brief introduction of myself. I'm Weston. I am also a creator in the immersive space. I created the first 360 VR sitcom. We didn't have 6 Degrees of Freedom, which Kiira and her team used, and so it's really going to be a pleasure to get to speak to you about how you use those extra layers of interactivity and immersion in your stories. I am also a professor of VR and immersive storytelling and television writing. I have a background writing for television sitcoms, and I've authored the taxonomy for immersive point of view, which is used to help catalog and review immersive narrative content at the Look.club, which is an online database of immersive narrative content. And we're very pleased to announce that with its US premiere, Finding Pandora X is now available in the searchable database, and it's being featured on the site this weekend. And so we're going to give you a lot of information about the show here today. But if you're curious for more and you want a little summary of it, along with a little video kind of walking you through the experience, go there and check it out. Any way that we can share and tell more people about this experience, we're so happy to. So that's a little bit about me. Maybe I don't want to spend too long on it, but I do feel like there are probably people tuning in who haven't had the chance to experience Finding Pandora X, because so many people haven't yet. It's just the beginning of this show's amazing journey. And so I can just give you a kind of a very short walk through my experience. I got to do it the other week. It's very exciting. You put on a VR headset, and then you enter VRChat, which is an app, and you follow one of your fearless leaders into the space, sort of let's just call it the lobby outside Mount Olympus, where you put on a toga and get it into costume as in your role, which is a member of the Greek chorus. So, that alone is very different than going to the theater on Broadway, right? You might dress up, but you don't dress up as a member of the cast. So that's really cool. And then you enter in to Mount Olympus, and the drama begins, and you're sort of told by the characters, by the gods on Mount Olympus, what the problem is and what they need to do. They've lost hope effectively, and everyone's at risk of disappearing if you can't help them find it. And so this show is a little bit of a quest in a very cool way that a normal play couldn't be, because you are instrumental in solving this quest. You're the one who's helping make decisions about where to go and what to do next. And ultimately, I don't want to give spoilers, but let's just say it kind of works out in some unexpected and fun ways. And along the way, you get to have these really cool adventures where you're engaging one-on-one, not only with the actors who are playing the Greek gods and goddesses, but also with your fellow theater goers. And that's kind of cool. I had the pleasure of both knowing some of them and not knowing others. And I enjoyed both. It was a chance to kind of bond with the people you already knew, but it was also kind of a fun way to make new friends in a way, because you've gone through this experience together. And that is unlike a traditional theater going experience in a very exciting way. So now I want to take advantage of having all these amazing people with us. And my first question is for Kiira and Alyssa, most likely, although of course, if anyone has anything to contribute, please do. How did the idea for this show come about?
That's a great question. So after we came back from Venice in 2019, we sat down as a team and we said, what do we really want to dedicate our time to? And we really want to take more time. We wrote the production of Love Seat in 3 days. Mac Rogers, a New York City playwright, wrote that production very fast. And that was a 45-minute production. And so we said, okay, we want to take more time and get the story right this time. What do we really want to spend our time on? So we asked the team to contribute ideas, and we all came up with different types of themes. And Laura and Mark said, how about Greek mythology? And Alyssa and I said, that's great. So we went down a Greek mythological rabbit hole for a while, thinking about all the strong female characters. We really wanted a strong female character and what we felt we could dedicate our time to for a while. And the story of Pandora emerged. And that isn't actually what we've released right now. That version of the story is not what we've done. But I just want to have Alyssa just share for a moment about where that kind of led us, because it is really interesting.
Yeah, originally when we first thought of Pandora, first of all, our immediate thought was, oh, there's all these boxes. We can do stuff with boxes. We can have the audience open boxes. And we started to do research on Pandora, which is when we realized that Pandora, actually the original oral tradition of Pandora, is not at all what we know today. And that Pandora actually was a goddess type figure who transported departed souls to the afterlife in jars. And these were big, huge urns, actually. And this just absolutely fascinated us. And we really went down a very big rabbit hole of, we're going to tell Pandora's story, and we're going to show how you can take control of your own story and that other people shouldn't be able to change your story. And it was all about female empowerment. And then COVID hit. And everything that we had been thinking about, we couldn't do, because what we wanted to do was have something that was mixing, like Love Seat, a live audience and a virtual audience. And we had in fact been gearing up to do this with La Mama and Culture Hub in New York. We were going to start experimenting with that first. So we did a full pivot, and we were saying, okay, so it's going to be really hard for us to tell Pandora's story in the way that we wanted to. So how can we use all of this research that we've been doing and still have an interesting story, but now just focus predominantly on only a virtual audience? And that was where we started thinking about, well, what's been going on in Mount Olympus all this time, ever since Hope disappeared and Pandora took it? What's been going on? And that was really the impetus for what became the story that we eventually told with Finding Pandora X. We have always seen this as an introduction to the Pandora story that we still hope to tell afterwards. But that's for, next year, perhaps. But in any case, that was where it happened, was that pivot. And we thought, actually, without even realizing, we've hit on the perfect theme for this time where we're all going into confinement, and the Greek gods have been confined to Mount Olympus and they have lost hope. So how do you get hope back when you're, confined and locked, and there's only two of you in this marriage that is relatively dysfunctional? How do you turn to others in a virtual way, and how can they help you to recover hope? What does it do to a marriage when you start working together to look for hope? Those are all sort of little subtexts of things that we were wanting not to explore necessarily, but maybe to trigger people to think about as they went through the experience. What does that hope mean to you? What would you do if you got hope back? If you're not confined anymore, where would you go? What would you want? All of those questions that we've been thinking about, we hope to give the audience little moments during the show where they can think about that as well.
Amazing. I'm so glad I asked. What an unexpected origin.
Sorry, that was a little long-winded, but
no, it's great. Of all the rabbit holes, the Greek mythological rabbit holes are my favorite.
I've been going down them for years.
In college, so it's right up my alley. So I'm curious, Alyssa, not to keep you on the hot seat, but I promise I'll take you off it down the road. Could you tell us about the writing process for a unique show like this? I not just assume, I know it has some specific needs and unique concerns when you're writing for immersive and for interactive. And how did you go from, okay, this is our new idea for something that's all in VR, to some sort of I imagine there was a script that you were able, maybe not, but maybe there was a script that you handed off to the actors. What was that journey like?
So my writing experience comes predominantly from the world of theme parks, and I've worked extensively for Disney, for Disneyland Paris, actually. So the whole process for writing immersive entertainment is something that is there's a very firm process in place for almost all theme park entertainment. And so it's that process that I automatically apply to writing for VR. And it starts off with sort of a high concept with a deck that has mood boards. And Kiira and I developed this entirely together of where do we want people to go? What do we want it to look like? What are some of the images? A lot of it as the writer or as a narrative director is saying to the director, what do you want? What experience do you want the audience to have? So this is very much in collaboration with Kiira, and under Kiira's guidance is, what is this experience going to be? When we go into the two worlds, what do those two worlds look like? What do we want the audience to do? So there's a lot, that's like the biggest part, is trying to figure out what we want the audience to feel, what we want them to do, how we want them to interact. Then once that part is done, I do what I call a show flow, which is a very detailed breakdown of what all the actions are going to be, who's going to say what, who's going to do what in terms of the characters and the action, and when they will divide, into a separate story world. And it's really that document that can be used as a guide for the technical team, because now they know exactly who's going to be where, what they're going to do, at what point in the show they're going to break off, or they need a certain prop. So in that show flow document, you put all of the information about props, music, light changes, separating into worlds. Again, all of this completely done with Kiira because she's directing the show. So as the writer and the narrative director, it is entirely my position to support the vision of Kiira and to move that forward in a way that's really coherent and really clear. For the first version of Finding Pandora X that we did this summer, there was so much to do that I didn't actually end up writing the dialogue. Someone else wrote the dialogue. And I was really concerned with, what are the actions? Where is everybody going? And then, because this is live theater and we are all still here for the second version at South by Southwest, I was able to take a second pass at the dialogue and really tweak it. And what was really wonderful was to have been able to learn how the audience responded in Venice and to take those lessons and say, okay, this is how they responded. This is the feedback we got. Now we're going to take a second pass at this story and provide more tension, make things clearer. The things that people didn't understand, we're going to try to make those clearer. So I feel that we're very, very lucky in the fact of doing a live piece, because we can take those lessons, and the actors were extremely, extremely grateful to them, because they just went with it. We're like, yeah, let's try that. Okay. I remember when Kiira and I had finished like all the rewrites and we sent it to them, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, half of it has been highlighted as changes. They're going to be like, what? But everybody just went with it and tried everything. We again experimented with some new scenes that we probably won't keep for the future, but it's really wonderful to have the opportunity to try things and to readjust given the audience feedback. So that's been really, really part of the process as well. And that has to do with it being live, that we're allowed to do that.
So Kiira, once you had the script, or maybe let's back up a step. Once you had the show flow document, what came next? Did you bring on actors? Did you bring on developers? Which one came first? Did they come on at the same time?
Yeah, we tend to work in a pretty parallel structure. So Jonathan basically has been with us since Love Seat. He never left. He's just become part of our team here. And we, as we would start to build things, I said to Mark, just give me a mountain. I just need a mountain and a green field. That'll make a stage. Like, I can't get him in New York. We're all spreading across the country due to the pandemic. So we just need, and Joanna working with location-based, we just need a location, right? HP being location-based entertainment, we just need a venue, we just need a rehearsal stage, and it doesn't have to be pretty yet. It just needs to feel like a space we can rehearse. So Jonathan started coming in, and we did these experiments in digital storytelling with Culture Hub and La Mama Theater, and we started to test some of the ideas that we wanted to do with a physical and virtual audience. But that kind of parallel structure of testing and playing and building and Alyssa writing everything all happened simultaneously. So basically I'd go from, I think my team knows, I kind of just hop from one meeting and virtual space to the next. And I'd go from, a testing situation where Mark is trying to get the flying mechanic built, and we're like testing that, to, bringing Jonathan in and testing avatars and scale and like world hopping to try and get avatars, or we're trying to bring an avatar designer on, to Alyssa writing dialogue and us trying to figure out, is this thing done in verse? Is it more modern language? And like all of this stuff got play tested pretty much simultaneously in a pretty tight turnaround. So by the time that we started writing the version for Venice, which was not the show we first intended, but was supposed to be a kind of really short prelude of just 2 characters that grew into a cast of 5 with an additional 2 actors alternating roles. And the show was supposed to be a 20-minute prelude to the show we really wanted to write. And that turned into an hour-long production with a branching narrative and escape rooms embedded inside. So these were all things that were on a list of stuff we wanted to get to. And I guess I have the tendency to always shoot for the moon and put them all together on a really expedited timeline. And then sometimes we kind of fail along the way. Like, I think there's mistakes that we make, and we're like, this dialogue doesn't work. So then, we, as Alyssa mentioned, we had more writers, and then that dialogue didn't work. All these things, we're like doing them all at once until we figure out what sticks. And then we get more fine-tuned on that as a team.
Wonderful. So Jonathan, I'll ask you next, since you were a part of this, from the beginning, that's obviously a very different role than an actor on Broadway who is cast when they're ready to start rehearsals and handed a script. So could you speak to the rehearsal process from the actor's point of view, and feel free to interpret rehearsal broadly, since you may have been on board before other actors were there to rehearse with, for example.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point about that. I'll sort of expand for a moment, which is about how do you go about creating any kind of experience? Like, what's going to be your your development process. And I think one of the things that's been really exciting for me as an artist is that I like to work really collaboratively and to be in a space where I'm working with collaborators who are not just inviting me in to interpret something as a performer in a very kind of confined way, but are saying the kind of work that we're creating and the kind of way that we're making it requires you to figure what this thing out is with us, like be a creative artist with us in the process. And that's the thing that I've really gotten to experience with this piece coming in really from that kind of early stage where we've got a little bit of writing and we've got a little bit of a set. We've got like the proto version of this Mount Olympus you can kind of see behind a lot of us. And we're going to test what this is. And of course, since the pandemic's just happened, we're going to test something we weren't expecting to test. And so let's just see what we find. And for me, that's really exciting. I'm happiest when I'm in a room and the answers aren't already known. It's not just following the blueprint and putting it out there. And I think that can be lovely, but what gets me really excited is when we really don't know. And so there's that iteration process that Kiira talked about, where each time we're exploring, we're putting it out there and getting feedback really quick, way before we feel like it's polished and it's ready. And I think that's actually one of the things that's really valuable for anybody who's thinking about creating work in extended, extended reality and VR, AR is that iteration process and getting that that information back from an audience. And for me as a performer, that was really valuable to have that kind of focus on what am I understanding by my interaction with an audience from a very early standpoint, and that kind of continues to inform the show, even as we continue to perform a fully realized version of it. We're still playing, tweaking, iterating, and based on the kind of interaction that we have as performers with the audience, there's a lot of improvisation that happens from night to night. Some of that's been built in by Alyssa and Kiira, and some of it is happens because of just what happens right now in VR and the medium. That there's always things that go a little. Down. Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, oh, somebody can't sit down in this moment where it probably is really important that they sit down. Well, we'll see what happens. And it's sort of fascinating to be able to be in character as Zeus and to be able to troubleshoot with somebody about their menu in VRChat, and that's okay. Like this is a playful space where all of that is interesting and still adds to the experience that the audience is having. That's one of the things that I found and continue to find really unique about performing in VR in this piece.
That is really interesting. I'm so glad you spoke to that, because that was something I'd wondered about, how much improvisation, because you can tell when you're in it, it can't possibly all be scripted to a T. That's just so the question was, how much of it was built in that it's scripted and then here's an improv section, or just as needed. For those improvisational moments that are quote scripted in, I mean, obviously the lines aren't scripted, but is there like a moment in the script that says actor improvises with audience, or is it like a game of some kind where they're going to ask this question, but then based on the responses, it's a free flowing back and forth? Like, how are those shaped?
Yes. as in it's both. There's a lot of different kind of improvisation. Sometimes it is Alyssa specifically saying, improv moment, and it's about this here, or this is the goal that we want from this interaction. And it's that's a lot of how that kind of conversation will start around certain moments of improv. Sometimes it is specifically a game. Let's play this game with the audience in this moment.
But I would say
I think both of those kind of moments.
Yeah. I was going to say there are moments when we're specifically asking the audience a question. And so it's impossible to script those moments. And that's something that Jonathan is really, really good at. When we're saying to the audience, when he's saying to the audience, so, is there another way? What should I do about Pandora? Give me some ideas. Give me some ideas. There's no way to script that, because there's no way to predict what the audience will come back with. So that would be a typical improvised moment, is Jonathan just goes with whatever they throw at him.
And then we have a lot of if-then scenarios as well. So there's these puzzles and activities and things that happen in these escape room sections, these kind of adventure moments in the middle of the show when the audience splits in this branch. And we have a lot of if-then situations. So it's kind of like, if the audience figures this out, then you can respond according in this way. If they don't figure this out, then you should do this so they can help you, we can move it along and we don't get stuck there for 15 minutes, because the tracks have to funnel back into scene 4 so we can figure out what we've learned and bring our puzzle pieces together.
Usually the audience figures it out. We've had some very smart audiences.
Oh, they're great, and it's fun. It's fun to see how they figure it out. But you know, especially actually in the part of the show where we do have 2 different branching narratives, because the audience goes on a journey with Hera, and then half of them go on a journey with me to the underworld. You know, there's a lot of improvisation, at least for me, that happens in that space, since it really is kind of just me and the audience in that space. And what has been interesting in that scene, and in some other scenes as well, is where there have been moments where I've been improvising in order to connect one story beat to the next, and to watch how Alyssa's followed that, and then sometimes we'll then incorporate that thing that started off as an improvisation then back into the script and built on it and refined it. And so there's this really interesting dialogue that happens, I've been finding, between the 2 of us, and then also with the audience, who's kind of also feeding in their own dialogue on each show.
I love that. That's so great. Okay, gosh, I'm just gonna say I could sit here with you guys all day, but I'm trying to be cognizant of time, so I'm gonna just tell, first of all, Mark, we're coming for you. But before we do, I want to figure out how Joanna fits into all this. So could you, Joanna and Kiira, if you want to chime in, but could you tell us, Joanna, a little bit about the process of coming on board this project? Like, at what point did you come on board? And then as an executive producer, what do you want to be in place before you come on board? And what do you expect to bring to a project? Oh, wait, you're on mute. You're on mute. All your gems and genius are going out.
I gave them all already. Well, so on Lovesea, we came on board as a tech sponsor. And so we offered up technology, both the hardware as well as any sort of technical consulting or software, in terms of what was needed and how to make it all work. And we really enjoyed the experience. Really, we were very impressed by what had been built. And similar with running, we offered some technology support. On this project, I'm trying to think of where, Kiira, you probably know better than where you were in the whole journey as when we started talking about what us coming in. Was it in the beginning of the year, maybe, or the fall or the winter? I mean, the whole year ran together, so it's hard to.
I know. I don't know if I can pinpoint the month anymore. I'm sure there's an email exchange with a pitch deck. I mean, I know Alyssa and I had done 2 pitch decks. We had a very significant one for the Pandora production. And then as the pandemic hit and we were pivoting and Culture Hub said, just put something else together, we had an outline for what that version would be. And that was a kind of experiment. And I think it just started with we need a headset to support an actor. Let's just start there. And then things just kind of kept growing as Culture Hub was behind us, and they said, okay, we can give you a little bit of funding so you can get through these experiments in digital storytelling, which gave us enough to just kind of all rehearse a little bit and put something really raw out to the world. So if anyone finds those live streams, you'll see us putting a lot of risky ideas out there. And I think, publicly playing with things that work, and publicly also playing with things that don't work, and seeing how we could take that physical and virtual format that we really wanted to do and make it now a totally virtual format.
Yeah, so I think we came in probably a little over a year ago. I want to say maybe even earlier than that, and so our it started with coming in again with technology, with some financial support, and then what we built out as how we wanted to participate was to support and support the overall project in those ways, but also getting more eyes on it, helping with press, helping with reach, helping with business model, and modeling out different scenarios and what might work, what might not work, thinking about where we would go. So those are some of the things that we help with. And in terms of kind of how we think about projects, we want to make sure that we're working with a project where our technology is critical to the project, and it showcases the technology in a really positive way, that the values of the storytellers as well as the story is aligned with our values as a company. And so here some of the values are around hope, around optimism, around connection, around community, and then also around inclusion. And so those are all values that are very important to us as a company, and very important to us on our virtual reality team. And so all of that aligned, and also projects where we can make a difference to the project, where that our contribution, whether it be through technology or through financial or through additional advice and strategy and building out, can positively impact the overall project.
Fantastic. No, it must be so wonderful for them to have you on board. Not only do you have the business, marketing, and tech expertise, but you have a background in entertainment. So you're really kind of the perfect fit, even outside of just the HP angle of it, which is
and it's really fun. It's really fun for us. As you said, I come from an entertainment background, so it's nice to and that is like my deepest passion with this industry, is like, what amazing stories and experiences are we building for people, and that live on top of, or in support of, and together with the technology.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm gonna tease again. We're gonna get to Vaughn, and he's gonna give you a secret special something that I'm not going to spoil just yet. But before we do, I just wanted to give Mark a minute to talk about his role in that process of, sort of coming on early while the project is still being built, and providing them that stage, right? The Mount Olympus, a mountain and grass. And then, how did you engage with everyone? Were you there in all the rehearsals with, communicating with the actors as well? Or was Kiira sort of the brain for the whole thing that would communicate with the different branches of creatives, and how was your technical process affected by this free-flowing rehearsal process?
Yeah, so Kiira definitely is the brain for the whole thing, but we were, as a tech team, quite often in the rehearsals just to see how things were working out, because there's a lot of, I guess you would call it playtesting, right? Because it's playtesting not only for the users, but also for our cast. Our cast are using tools frequently that we're making for them, so we have to make sure that they work correctly. And we can see issues sometimes, like we want Kiira to focus on, the things that she needs to focus on, so it alleviates her sometimes if we're in there as well, to sort of see how things are working out. We were lucky enough to be involved very early on in the process, and that allows us as the tech team to say, like, oh, here's this thing that you're coming up with in the script. Alyssa and Kiira are working on the script, and it's like, this is, here's an element that will, puzzle or something that will drive the story forward. And we'll sort of negotiate with them and be like, okay, here's what you want. And like, here's how we're talking, here's how we imagine as a tech team going to pull that off, right? So it's like, it's each of these puzzles is unique, and each of them has to be made in such a way that we like to compare it to escape rooms. And one of the things that I like about escape rooms is escape rooms, once you figure out the puzzle, it's not hard anymore. None of the tools are complicated. And that's the thing here with ours is, we have people that are brand new to VR. Like, we've had people that literally said they unboxed their headset the night before. And in those sort of cases, we need to make an experience that, experienced gamers or VR gamers are used to and find rewarding. But by the same token, make experiences that even, people that are brand new can also engage in and find fulfilling. So it was sort of that balance of, let's make really unique and interesting things for the cast members to do, especially in these split elements where they go to Futurist City and the underworld. but also stuff that they're not struggling to figure out, because again, we have like a time element, right? We have to reconverge the story at the end. So it was a lot of like back and forth and, removing friction, especially from things that didn't end up working very well, just because again, there's parts of the process. And that's what was so useful about bringing Vaughn onto the team, is his intimate familiarity with VRChat specifically, because there's nothing I can say that's more important than actually knowing the platform. The platform will provide you your possibilities and limitations for what you can do in the show.
Amazing. Well, that seems like an introduction so good, I couldn't have set it up better myself. I don't know if Vaughn, do you want to take it away, or Sarah, would you like to introduce the next section of our program?
Yeah, so sure. We are so excited to have an exclusive feature for Reconnect. Vaughn has so graciously offered to give us a tour of the space, a world tour of this virtual space. We are so excited to see it. Vaughn, you can take it away. Thank you.
All right, yeah. See a screen share. Okay. It turns out the button was a lie. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
So Vaughn will do a screen share, and I'm going to help narrate and kind of guide us through. And then I'll make this pretty collaborative and also encourage other members of our team to pepper in some stories. But first we'll get Vaughn's ability to screen share when we know that that magical ability has been granted to him, and we'll bring a view of the world in from Mount Olympus, and we'll kind of take you guys through for anyone that hasn't been into our story world.
Is that working?
Yes, brilliant.
Right.
So this is the cloud lobby. So Vaughn's going to kind of navigate through, and we'll probably notice, a little bit of stuttering and latency and all of the wonderful things that come with working in the digital arts. But this is where the audience begins. And so there's some chairs you can see. We learned that we have to teach them how to sit. That's something that we didn't think would be totally necessary. We'd built a pretty detailed onboarding. So there Vaughn is sitting for us. And Vaughn, if you want to just tilt down for a second, just leave your camera showing your Greek chorus avatar. I think we can see the kind of body. See how you have hands there? So the whole audience gets to embody this Greek chorus avatar. We give them this avatar to wear, like Eva was saying. It's like putting on
Here,
their.
I have it here. I have it in my
costume and toga. Oh yes, and you can also see on Joanna's screen the pop out of her fully embodied. So when you get to look down in the experience, these are your hands. This is your body. You start to identify with this role, and that's something that's really important to us. Alyssa has worked very hard on all of these really clear onboarding placards that we have, which we've also seen a number of our colleagues also kind of replicate in their productions, because I think we're finding that as we build experiences in Altspace or VRChat and on other platforms, there are specific things that is helpful to do, but if you're new to the platform, you might not know how to do these things. And even if you are an old hat at the platform, you also might not know how to do these things. So we teach you a little bit about kind of using your menus to encourage a better experience. We remind you how to mute. So like, as you see, like, is a dog barking or do you need to sneeze? These are things that we wouldn't normally have to do in the theater. We have to be mindful of that. You don't answer your cell phone in the theater. You are reminded sometimes in an early message not to open a wrapper. And so we're reminding people of those things too, because you kind of forget about this in the virtual world. So, you might have a construction site. You might have a really loud computer that's humming right next to your headset. And you just have to be mindful, because we do want the audience to engage and talk in different key moments. So Iris and Hermes greet you in the cloud lobby, and it's this really fun interactive. I mean, we're so lucky to have these actors, Jen Harris, Hilary Walker, Sarah Finn, and Lisa Drang, who take you through this scene and engage with you with so much energy and heart. And so Vaughn, if you want to kind of pivot over towards the Greek chorus avatar, we could show there's a changing pedestal that we have. So we get you into costume over there. And that's how you get to start to take your role on in the production. And then let's march through perhaps the cloud gate into the opening sacred fire.
And just FYI, the frame rate is much higher when you're in the experience. People would be violently.
I'm roughly 7 miles from the nearest paved road, so my upload speed isn't great.
So we'll kind of drive through a little bit and then maybe we'll pause. So why don't you just give us a pause right here, Vaughn? This is a great angle.
Right.
So we see this sacred fire here on our left in the screen. And so this is, we like to build in as many three-dimensional tools when we're making our productions as we can. So this fire was made in tilt brush. And this was done by our artist, Sarah Finn, who works in the VR industry. The lighting, what's pretty magical about all this lighting that you see in the environment, was designed by theatrical and VR designer Beth Cates. She works in both theater. She's a background in physical theater production, as well as a master's working in VR and computer science. So we are really grateful to have her brain on our team, and she's really lit the whole world. It really came to life. Then you see we have all this graffiti, these messages that are kind of reminding us, giving us a little bit of a modern flavor, what the mortal realm has been leaving as they break into these worlds. And they're pretty much all these messages are saying things like, die Apollo, and like no gods, like we don't believe in these gods anymore because the mortal realm is frustrated and of course they don't have hope. And so Vaughn, why don't you take us slowly and we'll stop when we get into the light forest and we can take a pause there and talk about what happens in the light forest. So as we are approaching the light forest, this is exactly what the Greek chorus gets to do in the production. They teleport, so they're learning how to use their locomotion. We're definitely walking through this space. So some people like to compare us to Punch Drunk and Sleep No More sometimes because it is really active. And that's a really great view, Vaughn. I love that. It's a really great example. So again, this light forest was created in tilt brush by Sarah Finn. You might see rotating around these pillars of light are the names of these gods. And maybe Alyssa, you want to share one of the stories that gets shared, perhaps. Vaughn, do you want to pick Apollo or Athena? Alyssa, do you want to share one of the messages from them?
So at this point, we ask the audience to, if hope returns to the world, what would they wish for? And we talk about they're going to go on a quest like the great heroes like Hercules and Theseus and Jason and so we asked them to think of a wish, think of something that they would wish for if hope returned and they could go out again, and pick a flower and offer that flower to the gods. And then Corey, who's our Greek chorus leader, will give them a prediction. So I see, Vaughn, that you have chosen Apollo, who is the god of poetry and sunlight and all sorts of wonderful things. And I predict, Vaughn, that when this confinement is over and COVID is a dim memory, your life will be full of sunshine and poetry.
So what gets to happen is for each chorus member, they pick a god. And I don't know, Vaughn, if you can click and even drop it, or if you want to click some of these flowers and drop and kind of show them magical. We have a little fun magical surprise that happens when you pick your god and you drop it in the light pillar. There's a really kind of beautiful magic moment that happens. So, and then Corey gets to as many in the Greek chorus as she can. She doesn't get to everybody, but she tries to share these kind of special prophecies with you, depending on the god that you picked. So, so that's our moment in the light forest. And this really grew out of a COVID moment, actually. Alyssa and I had come up with a number of ideas. The idea was, at one point, I think we were even talking about actually dedicating pillars of light to people that had passed from COVID. Like we would have the audience contribute names that we were going to dedicate pillars of light. And then that...
We're like, that's a little morbid.
It felt,
we want this to be hopeful and not sad.
Exactly. And also just would be a lot of work on the dev team. Like, we'd be updating the project all the time based on submissions. So what we actually did in digital experiments and digital storytelling is we had people dedicate, they could pick like pictures of things, of images. And I feel like that was like an early kernel that led to this moment of the building of the light forest. And then we chose, we'll keep it in the frame of the narrative. We won't make this all about the mortals here, but this will be about the gods that have disappeared. So Vaughn, why don't you take us to the entrance that we start to pass through? Corey leads us out, and I'll have you pause, and maybe we can even get you close enough and then have you pull up a lighting cue. This is Corey's staff. It's left for her here. But so why don't you just pause for a moment, and can you bring up lighting cue 1?
Mm-hmm.
So this is an animated lighting cue. I mean, probably it's so subtle for the audience, like they're just kind of marching through, but there's all of these amazing lighting cues that come on during the production that Beth Cates has designed, and SB Proctor, our sound designer. We have all these live sound cues that happen in the production. So I feel like like the audience, it's so like they might not even know that we're kind of wrapping all of these live moments around them. But just like a theater production would have, we have all of these really beautiful lighting design moments. And so that's lighting cue 1. So you guys get to see it really carefully, because probably if you saw the show, you just fly through it and you might not even pay attention. But now if you leave the light forest and you enter towards the main stage field, that is something that subtly pops up.
And could I just interject something here, which is that this is something that probably a lot of people, even who have done the experience, are not aware of, which is that we're all on, the whole crew actually is on Discord behind the scenes, and that in Venice, Kiira was calling all of the cues. So this is actually working like live theater. We have a stage manager who gives the actors their cues when they're about to come on, and Kiira was calling the lights and audio cues. So
MC called the light cues, but yes, I did bring them up. I ran the board, which was a crazy idea. But I did run the board, and fortunately now we have Vaughn running our board, which has been such a gift to us.
I'll just chime in on that as well. But as a performer, it means that I've got my earbuds here, and I've got one set of earbuds that is in the world, so I can hear everybody talking in the world, and I've got actually a Bluetooth headphone in the other ear that is tapped into the Discord channel, so that I can hear if anything's going wrong or when my next cue is from the stage manager. And so that's an interesting experience. And actually, one thing I'll share from our very first experiment, where half the audience was in world, in VR headset in world with me, and the other part of the audience was streaming. And so they were watching on, like I think YouTube was the streaming platform that we were using. But I knew that there were cameras, virtual cameras in the space that Kiira was calling between. And because I had this other earbud in, I could hear Kiira calling all of those cues. And so I knew where the camera was at any given moment. And so as a performer, I'm not only thinking about how the audience that's around me is perceiving me, but I'm also thinking about where is that camera right now to make sure that I'm including that streaming audience at the same time, and kind of almost having two different conversations at the same time. Just is both overwhelming and actually very, very exciting as a performer to juggle.
A lot of information. So for any actors or anyone that's working with actors, it's pretty technical, but I think, when you work with really intelligent actors, they can handle, you can keep throwing things at them. They can handle multiple audio streams and learning and like knowing all about these technical cues. And it makes for a really great team effort. Like, we're all in this together. We know that things will break down. We have to be able to make each other aware. And like, I remember in one of the last shows that we did during South by Southwest, Jonathan was moving from, he just transitioned. We bring the audience through these portals, and all kinds of things can go haywire. I don't know how many of you, transport yourselves through portals on a regular basis, but in the virtual world, right? We lose people sometimes. Wonderful surprises happen. Jonathan, and this had never happened before. Every show, there's a new thing that we learn that's never happened before, that we've never encountered. So I think our technical diagram list is just growing. I don't know how Mark and Chris Tapino are doing in documenting all of these wonderful technical things that we navigate through every time, but I think our list just must be like 20 pages long at this point. And the audience loaded in without Jonathan, or Jonathan loaded in first, and then the audience wasn't there for a long time. So he went back to Mount Olympus to get them, and then the audience arrived and there was like nothing he could do. And I'm watching this from backstage and I'm like, are they going to figure this out? Because can they actually break through this first puzzle without having any information from him and any of the kind of dialogue prompts that Alyssa's written for him? And it was just really, really fascinating to see them kind of try to figure things out, and then Jonathan come back and have to improvise at the top of that scene because all of these weird technical things that happened that we didn't expect. So we're definitely riding by the seat of our pants in every performance.
And those provide actually really happy accidents where you learn something. So, you know, coming in late, there's actually a narrative opportunity there where, you know, we've set up that the gods are in risk of disappearing and the world, you know, their world falling apart if they don't get help. And so me coming in late, it just seems to be like I can just, you know, improvise that as part of what's going on in that moment. And I love, you know, like the fact that taking account of those happy accidents is something that not only the performers on the narrative side, but also on the developer side, we're kind of tracking all of that vocabulary so that we're always learning from those mistakes. So I should mention I teach a class at University of Maryland on augmented reality design, and specifically for experiential augmented reality. And I'm constantly telling the students like, oh, good, you found a new way that the experience went wrong, that it went haywire. Those are great. All of those failures, those are totally your friends. And, you know, those are the things to get excited about when you run into and then see how you troubleshoot those.
But I think also with the Discord and like our team behind the scenes, we've gotten really good at sort of hiding some of those. So quite often people will be like, oh, we thought you meant to do that. And it's like, we thought that was just part of the show. So, you know, also credit to our actors for very good improving, but, you know, we're fortunate that, you know, everyone on the team is ready to solve problems immediately and sort of understands the platform enough that like we can resolve issues quite often, like very fast as they happen, especially with audience members, because quite often audience members themselves have their own unique issues. So we may find ways to get people in there to help them secretly while like everyone else is kind of watching the show.
My favorite instance of that issue was actually one recently where Jonathan was supposed to be using a key prop in the scene. And we just kind of all watched that prop float off into the distance very slowly. So Jonathan had to quickly come up with a different prop to use instead. And it all went pretty well. So
yeah, and it's also a place where, you know, the fact that I have a somewhat of a technical understanding about this world because I've spent time in it and had conversations with Mark, with Vaughn, Kiira, so that I, you know, not only sort of narratively, but technically understand how the world works. So when something like that happens, I know what's going on. And that actually means that I can spend less time as an actor going, wait, what's happening right now? And go, okay, that weird, you know, technical thing that happens with physics in VRChat's happening. And so now I can weave that into my story. And you know, those as the crew often gets us credit for as performers, which is really lovely, that we've learned to be our own technical troubleshooting support staff with this, which is I think part of the for me a really great challenge to engage with working remotely. With Loveseat, we had a technical person there who's dedicated just for us in case our computer crashed or a headset went out during the live performance. And so, you know, this year it's been us as performers going, my frame rate is, you know, too low for this to work right now. I know how to refresh my headset, or my audio is not working. I know some ways that I can troubleshoot this. Or if I can't solve it, I know how to talk to Mark or somebody else on the dev team and say, here's what's going on, here's where I'm stuck. And that really can help them to help me solve a problem I can't solve myself.
That's been an exciting thing for us, where we had these dedicated technicians in the production of Loveseat, and now I feel like we can say that the actors are empowered to become their own technologists. So they're each running their own little HP setup of all of their hardware themselves. So, okay, Vaughn, why don't you take us through towards the field where we encounter scene 1. So all of these scenes have been this kind of pre-show moments that we've written. And then really scene one happens through here. And you'll see a mix of 3D modeling and a mix of tilt brush. And let's just pause right there. That's great. And could you, in fact, bring up lighting Q2?
Here we go. It's a slow transition. But
it's a very slow one. So what you start to see is the lighting starting to grow. So as the audience gathers, and the audience really travels further, but I want you guys to have a kind of full picture of the world so you can see Mount Olympus and how grand the scale is. I remember when we brought in some of our designers, I remember SB, her first time, our sound designer, kind of at the gate of the world, just going like, she just said to me, it's much bigger than I thought. And you just don't get the sense of the scale until you're in there in VR. So this world is quite massive. And we've been playing with some different things. We played with something during South by where Zeus started to play a game with some of the Greek chorus members with at the table, because of course all of the gods have disappeared. So he's disillusioned and he is having these lengthy conversations with them, but they're not really there. And then we played with some other things. Corey brings the chorus up. They have a line that they've rehearsed with her that they get to say in the scene. And so we don't want to give too much away here, but Jonathan, do you want to talk about any fun memories for you of as you get to sort of change costumes in scene one, or as the chorus comes to greet you? Anything here you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think that there's one of the things that's incredible about creating work and performing in work that's in VR is that you're able to play with scale in some really unique ways. And I think it's, one of these things to keep in mind, like what is something that VR does really well? It plays with scale really well. And that changes our perception of what's happening around us, how we kind of interpret events, but also how we interpret characters. So the fact that Zeus, that avatar, is a good deal taller than any of the other avatars that are in the space, that gives something to the character, right? We sort of understand that he's got stature because we literally can embody him with it. And there's different places where Zeus can, I can change my avatar, and we've kind of set up some different places for me to do that in those first scenes. And one of those avatars gets really, really huge. And that's something that, you couldn't embody in the same way if you're doing it as a live performance. And it's really fun to kind of play with that with the audience, because my relationship to them can instantaneously change, and there's some fun to be had. And one of the things that's great about live performance is that every time you get to try it slightly different and see how the audience reacts slightly different with each of those moments. And even in VR, where you can't see facial expressions on the audience members, I've kind of learned how to read their avatar body language and see how something's landing on them. See if, I need them to look in a certain direction at a certain moment, whether with my body language and with my voice, I can help direct them to that area in the scene that's most important for them to look at.
So Vaughn, I don't know that we'll get through all the other beats that we talked about, but maybe where we want to end is just if you want to take us up the dock, since we have Jonathan here with us, so we could just sort of so there's a boat over here that Jonathan gets to take half the audience to go to the underworld. And we won't go in the boat necessarily, but we'll just kind of give you guys a pretty view of what this half of the audience gets to journey onto. It's really fun. I think one of my favorite things is because this moment can be improvised and it takes everyone a minute to kind of figure out how to sit in VR. It's not a normal thing sitting. So we get to experience this. And maybe Vaughn, if you can just show us where we're going. Yeah, if you guys see that kind of really cool nebula, this is this kind of spot that we take the boat ride to, and then everyone goes through a portal to get to the underworld. But one of my favorite moments that I've now heard a number of audiences is to sing row, row, row your boat with them on the way. And it's been absolutely adorable and cheerful, and like the whole audience gets so into it. So I don't know if that's happened to you every time, but it's been fun as some audiences engage with you there.
Yeah, that was a moment where, there wasn't something specific scripted in during this whole journey that takes, I don't know, 45 seconds to a minute or so to complete. And so it seemed like there was an opportunity to have some fun and engage in the audience in some way. And so I think kind of early on, I sort of hit on this sort of play on the, song Row, Row Your Boat, and Zeus has come up with his own little lyrical change for it. And what's fun is that without prompting at all, the audience decides to sing along, and which is actually really kind of incredible, because trying to get a group of people to do something in unison in VR is notoriously difficult. And so oftentimes it will keep people from wanting to do something all at the same time. And we've created a world where people feel okay to all jump in and to vocally do something together. And that's actually pretty remarkable in VR.
It's been really playful. So I think, Vaughn, if you want to stop sharing your screen here, we won't go to the last beat. We won't need to get there, I think, so we can hand the mic back over to Eve as we managed to pull off this little world tour with whatever frame rate, but hopefully that gave everyone a little bit of a glimpse into the story world of Mount Olympus, our main stage. And we won't show you the other two quest adventures. We have to save something to surprise you guys, so when you come back to the show, you can actually see something fun. But that at least gives you an idea of the bulk of the scenes take place in this main stage environment.
That makes me want to ask a question, Kiira, and I don't know if you know the answer yet, but do you know yet when people will get to see it? Like when there will be more shows and we can all jump back in, or in for the first time?
Great question, Eve. We're working on that. We are aligning actor and tech team schedules. We're trying to figure out, what is the right price point? What would people want to pay for this? Because we can't just run the show totally for free. So to kind of figure out what's
an audience survey for that question.
Yes, right. If anyone wants to comment here also on what they think the price point should be, we're open. But it's definitely a hefty, it's a good sized commitment for us on our side. We log in an hour before the show. We provide audience support. And then on top of it, our actors are coming from Broadway and real professional theater, and they give it their all, and they're singing and they're improvising with you, and there's a lot of energy. It's a full effort. It takes a village.
We have one vote for $25.
Sold.
So Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to explain how the Q&A works, or if I should, in terms of like how we want folks out there in the audience to let us know what they want to ask.
Yes.
My sense is it's putting it in the Q&A chat. So if you go to the bottom of your menu, you'll see Q&A. If you click on that, you should be able to type in a question, and then I will pass that along to our panelists. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Please engage in the Q&A. Thank you so much for this tour, and we welcome any feedback, comments, as well as questions. What do you think? Love to hear in the chat.
Well, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, if you don't mind me, I had some extra questions that we didn't even get to before. Since we were just talking a little bit about this idea of getting the show out to a broader audience, I'm curious if you guys would be willing to share a little bit about the process of getting it seen, both by festival teams and by real people. Having this great idea and amazing talent and a show is one thing, but it's a whole other thing to get people on. And you guys did it even earlier than the festivals. You had it sounded like you had sort of test audiences coming in to help you refine it. So I'd be super curious to know about that process, at each of those stages.
For experiments in digital storytelling, we had the kind of split structure that we've been doing in the physical and virtual world. So we did it instead of the physical world, as we could not gather there anymore, we had the digital world gathering online, and we did these camera views out from the virtual world, and we also had a virtual audience. And that was a lot to coordinate. We want to get back to that structure, but I think our team needs to be double the size of what it is, because we're basically handling 2 audiences simultaneously, and they have very different needs. They have to go and see things creatively, like, and it has to be very carefully structured for them. And I remember in some of that footage, we'd had Mark and Chris DePino as our virtual cinematographers, and we'd had done some camera blocking and rehearsed with them with the actors. And then our audience just went and stood right in front of their cameras. And I tried to flip their blocking live to be like, okay, camera B, go here, and camera A, go here. And then an audience stepped in front of the other camera. So it was like nothing, it was like trying to control chaos, which again, I think is, sort of why we're in this. We love the live challenge. We want this to be live, but it comes with a lot of unexpected surprises. So we're just navigating those things. And yes, we definitely had some beta audiences come through. And then as we...
where do you get your beta audiences from?
It's a great question. I think they come, they're people that have headsets, so they're not total newbies. But we definitely brought people in that were new to the VRChat platform, so we could test with them about what it would be like to get through some of those early onboarding beats, and was there enough onboarding for them? And it's a real Herculean effort to get every audience member in. There's definitely some layers of, and especially for those that get a headset, we certainly have met people that come to the festivals that tell us, they bought a headset in order to watch our show. They're absolutely new to VR entirely. So like just charging their headset and putting batteries in their controllers is all new for them. So we also try to help them and hold their hand a bit. And that's why we provide a full hour of audience support on a Discord channel before the production even begins.
Amazing. And so, that's a Herculean achievement, but then getting it seen by festival folks, like that must be a whole other one. You're in different places. They may or may not have headsets. Like, how do you bridge that gap? Because one of the things, I know what you're dealing with is you have this amazing vision and you've brought it to life, but trying to convey it to a programmer without them having seen it with some sort of a trailer or a write-up is, it's impossible, sort of, in a way. Like, how did you guys clearly you've been great at it, so kudos to you, but how did you overcome that challenge?
So I'm typically, and this is, for better or for worse, I'm kind of not afraid to show people my work before it's finished, which is not really normal in the film industry. And when I made cinema, and 2D formatted films, I would never show something to someone that hadn't been through, like, if it was a test audience, they were filling out questionnaires. If it was a rough cut, but it had still gone through many forms of editing. These days, as I work in VR, and it's something that I've blogged a little bit about, I find that I'm just sort of going, it's so early days, I don't really care. I know things are not going to work. So it's possible that, critics in the environment might say, oh, this is not fully developed here, and this was broken, but I know that. And I'm just saying, that's okay. We're experimenting. And the only way I think that we push the needle forward as an industry is if we break things together and we experiment. So I brought programmers in. They had headsets. They certainly, any of the VR programmers at the festivals did have access to a headset. And I sent them story decks and the script and pictures and a whole stack of materials. But in order to, send them more than just a 2D video clip, because it is immersive, I would bring them into the world if I didn't have actors. So I'd bring them in and kind of show them around and show them how some of the mechanics and things worked and talk through story beats. And then as soon as we had actors performing, whether it was a rehearsal or we had, like a special event that we were performing, I would try to get them there, which is always tricky because they are very busy and we're usually running very limited amounts of shows. So coordinating all those pieces is also a challenge.
Yeah, it really is. This is amazing. Every part of this is an amazing feat that you guys have pulled off. One of our questions from our panelists is that he's writing that he's an actor in Iran, and is saying that the space of theater in his country is full of censors and limiting for free work. What might your advice be for an actor like him in that sort of space?
Well, I would hope that these virtual spaces provide a lot of freedom, that we don't have the kinds of barriers that we might have by going to a physical venue. Like probably it's might be tricky to record something and post something, but I wonder if, at least by finding people you want to rehearse and perform with and create with, kind of finding other creatives out there that you want to work with, you might be able to do more than you might not be able to do in a physical location that might have other barriers. Anyone else want to chime in on thoughts for that?
I was just going to say that this is one of the unexpected silver linings of the phase that we've all been through with COVID, is that remote connections have become so prevalent and so easy. So I know that you're in a country where it's not as simple as it is in the West, clearly, but you can be acting from anywhere in the world, and you can find team members and other people interested in VR theater anywhere in the world. That said, I don't know if you have access to headsets. I don't know how your internet connection works. It's easy for us to say these things, but I would say, if you can, reach out to other people who are involved in theater, reach out to other people who are involved in VR. That virtual connection is an incredibly rich resource that has really become developed over the past year.
Yeah, and just along with that, I mean, I would definitely say that be aware of, I don't know how, like Alyssa was saying, I don't know how your internet works. If you typically have to use VPNs and stuff, this VRChat, the platform that we use, may be prohibited. And so you would have to find a way to sort of connect with other people, if that's the case, in order to put on something like this. That being said, if you can use those platforms, I would explore the platforms and then consider making your own show, because the great thing about VRChat, is that you can be anonymous if you choose to be. There's unique communities for all sorts of people on VRChat, and there's people that are looking to do this sort of stuff.
I dropped a link for a project that was at Sundance this year that was about a experience that I ran. So you might want to check out that project. They didn't use VR; they used other 360 mediums. So they used YouTube video, live video, as well as Instagram. But it's an interesting project, and maybe some other people that you might want to connect with that worked on that project to understand a little bit more about what they did and how.
Just to chime in really quickly, also, I think Joanna brings up a good point, which is that there are lots of different digital mediums that are available to collaborate on, and so the barrier to entry to just kind of getting in some kind of immersive space to be able to explore what that space might have in terms of storytelling and how to collaborate and communicate with other people from other parts of the world is I think more possible now than ever before, and there's more people from across the world that are in those different spaces, in those social spaces, to start conversations. And just like our team, we had to kind of go into VRChat to see what we could make. I think there's that possibility for any platform. People are making things on an audio platform like Clubhouse, or creating shows via Zoom. I know there's a lot of great work that's happening at this festival from people who are just getting really creative with how to see what's out there and just available to hand, really, and make something from that. I think live performance makers, that's one of the things that we're always good at, whether it's an empty space and we're using what's there in the empty space, or whether that's in sort of the digital space.
Great. And we have a couple more questions that have come in while you guys were giving that amazing answer. When you discuss new projects and themes to develop, how much do you consider or give weight to knowing the technology that can enable your vision? So how is the conversation about technology at the development stage? What is that?
Well, all I can say is Kiira is one of the most visionary people that I have ever worked with. And often her creative vision comes first, and then it's up to all of us, but most specifically Mark, to figure out how to do it. So I would say that the creative in terms of Kiira often comes first, but she also has a vast knowledge of technology and also has the amazing ability to imagine using existing technology in new ways. And then it's over to Mark, and he has to accomplish the impossible to make her vision come true. That would be my response to that one.
Very kind. Alyssa, you're also brilliantly creative. Yes, and someone's asking us literally about getting the tilt brush in. So I was like, there must be tilt brush in this environment. And then Mark had to figure it out.
Yeah, no, it works out though, because when we collaborate with each other, sort of like working through like, oh, there was a specific puzzle I'm thinking of in Future City where it was like, you guys had an original vision for it. And I said, here's something similar that we could do that would, be far simpler and, wouldn't have to go nuts trying to figure out how to get it to work. So it is like there is some negotiable element to it where it's like, you have to collaborate with the team to say like, what can we do that sort of gets the gist, gets the thought, the original thought that the narrative team had across, but is still manageable for us on the development side because, there's limitations, not only there's limitations with VRChat, there's limitations of what people will be able to accomplish as new users. There's a lot of things to consider when you're building these elements into the story.
Okay, our next question is, do you think users' avatars could be used as a tool to create identification with their own characters, like in role-playing?
I do, yeah. I think that there's a lot of possibility for your avatars and and filling out much deeper narratives. And there's something that we've been toying about with Jonathan, actually, about developing a variety show. We keep getting really busy, but we've been talking about the idea of Zeus kind of hosting this variety show with these gods and goddesses, and using our backdrop again as a location. We really treat Mount Olympus as a location where we can do other things. We could run other productions, and we could also host live events like we've done with IndieWire and like we'll be doing with HP in the future. So we really like to look at this story world that we've built as a location and venue. And I think the same goes through with the avatars, that we can embrace the avatar and make that part of the character's identity, and that can continue on in a vast metaverse with a lot of infinite possibilities.
And I think that was part of your vision too for Finding Pandora X, Kiira, if I could speak for you for a moment, in the development of the Greek chorus avatar that you did with Rhea, was to have an avatar that was sort of gender neutral. It could be worn by anyone, but in putting on that avatar, that costume, everyone identifies as a member of the Greek chorus. So I think that that's an example of a very effective way of using an avatar to have people identify with a character, with their own characters.
It's true. And we talked a lot about skin color too. There was a moment when an early design team, and this was just, sort of by choice, by default, that we started to make the gods, human skin colors. And then we said as a team, there's something else we can play with. And I spoke with Rhea, who's this wonderful artist that's become our lead character designer. And we talked about, why do the gods have to be human colors? They could be any color of the rainbow. And so let's embrace that and say gods don't have to be what we might typically associate in the default version of our brains. Let's play with bias. Let's play with these other things and push boundaries. And so our Greek chorus is gray, and I think they're beautiful, and they sparkle when they catch the light. And many of our audience members continue to wear their Greek chorus avatar into other parts of the metaverse. It's kind of this souvenir that we give you for coming to the show. You get to take this avatar with you out and save it.
People, you probably do get more use out of your Greek chorus avatar than you do from your Sleep No More mask with the long nose. Amazing. So Sarah, I know we've come upon 2 o'clock. There are a couple more questions in the chat. Do we have time for any more? Do we have time for one final question? Do we have time for 3 more? Where are we at in terms of timing?
Let's maybe take one more question, maybe from someone in the Q&A who their question hasn't been answered. I'll let you, Eve, if you find a good one you want to submit. Thank you all for your questions. These are really great.
Okay, so this is a little bit, I'm torn between 2 of them, but but because we haven't talked about this yet, I'll ask this one. From a practical standpoint, budgeting for a production of this size, what is your budget range? Do you have a larger contingency budget for technical issues that arise? How do you deal with something as specific as a budget in a production that has so many unknowns?
This production is built on passion and love. So, so I would say on client productions, we have contingencies. And here the contingency is like, how many of us will give up our weekend to solve something because it has to be solved, because the audience is coming and we have to figure it out. And then we all just put the hours in to lift it over the threshold. And we've been really grateful to have the financial support from HP and all of the hardware. But really these productions, they can be quite costly. And we've been, I would say our whole team has been building this on heart.
Well, that's a nice note to end it on.
But we have a lot of heart.
No, a really amazing amount of heart that shows in your work and that shows in your answers. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have gotten to sit here with you guys this afternoon and chat about all your work and this amazing experience that is, has now been brought to the US. It had its international debut and now it's coming closer into the grasp of everyone here who's watching today. And that's exciting. An exciting step on this journey. So everyone here has a sense of what they get to look forward to, and hopefully also walk away a little bit inspired by all of your work and ability to sort of make dreams a reality.